Hello, hello, everyone. This is Practicing Life, and I am your host, Ashley Pitzer. And I have a fabulous guest on my show today. I'm so excited. This is Jason Medford. And so, for all of you out there that don't know him, he's like a mystery man to me. And I'm so excited to have him on my podcast and get to really pick his brain and like learn why he's so magical and mysterious. So, for all of my heartfelt leaders, I'm just so excited for to just have this interview and share his story. So, just a little background. Jason has had like multiple careers. I found out that we are both like at one point risk managers. But the thing is he's always piqued my interest because he has these fabulous stories about music and like the way he makes, like, I don't even like music to the extent of like the why behind an artist. But when I listen to his stories, I'm 100% drawn in. I want to know more. He has this magical touch. I've even heard him sing sometimes. Just everything about him pulls you in. It's amazing. It's magical. So Jason and I met through a common program called Transformation. I'm going blank. Transformation Coaching Program. It was with Jim Fortin. And so in this program, I've talked about it before. It was all about transforming your life and living your best life. And that means like working on your inner being and choosing what you want to think that is the most empowering thing. And Jason always stood out to me because of these, like he would just have these really great insights. And so we would leave these Facebook Live videos, and I looked forward to his all the time. I just have to be honest with that. I looked forward to it because he was always going to share something super insightful, impactful, and I wasn't even expecting it or looking for it. And then I would hear it and I was like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And so I had to have him on my podcast. I have to know all of the things about him and figure out what's his secret because he's amazing. So let's hear it, Jason.
You want to know what makes me amazing? I don't know.
I
It's a
know.
mystery to me as well, right? So no, it's funny because so thank you
You're
for
welcome.
those kind words. It's nice to know. I do a lot of videos, I do a lot of podcasts. I mean, I put out a lot of content and you never really know who's listening to it or the impact that you're actually having unless people like you actually share with me, right? So
Yeah.
it's like there's some days it's like, God damn it, nobody's listening. Well, I know people are listening, right? But sometimes you don't get the feedback. But it's interesting the way that you introduced me as well because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to get put in a box.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so what's funny is, you can put lots of different labels on me, and I'll just kind of share kind of how I describe myself with the underlying, uh, I really like the term international man of mystery.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Wow.
right? Austin Powers, right? Hey,
Let me write this
baby.
down for my next book.
International man of mystery, and you'll hear more probably about that if depending on the stories that I end up sharing and why I kind of consider myself that. But I like to leave people wondering a little bit, right?
Do that
I do
successfully.
that to a lot of people. I do that on purpose, right? And a lot of times I will use some words that are different to describe myself. So one word that I use is edutainer.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah. You
what the
combined
hell
it.
is an edutainer? Yeah. Well, and I think, I don't know if Walt Disney was the first one to do it, but I know he used the word back in the 50s. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a combination of entertainment and education, right? Because I mean, for most of my life, I've been in some teaching or training kind of capacity, but I always want to make it fun as
Yeah.
well, right? And
Yeah.
so whatever I tend to be doing, I'm teaching all the time, but most people don't realize that I'm teaching, right? So
Because it's
even just like
fun.
when you were referring to some of the Facebook lives and other things that I do, I'm teaching and I'm sprinkling little things in there that a lot of times people don't even realize. You know, they'll get themselves into kind of a hypnotic trance They don't even realize, but they're receiving something from me,
Mm-hmm.
which usually is some healing and some hope and some love from
Those
me,
are all wonderful things.
right? Because that's what I want to help the world with. So you get a little bit of that with me, right? I use a word conciliari.
Ooh, let's go on that.
Conciliari, right?
I
Well,
know,
if you're
exactly.
familiar with the Godfather movies, right? The conciliari is the right hand man of the mob boss. So he's the person who can argue with the boss, but really tells the boss what the boss needs to hear, right?
Okay.
And so in those organizations, actually, the Sicilian mafia created that kind of role in their org chart, because the problem is, in something like that where you've got a very patriarchal hierarchical order, nobody questions the boss,
That's right. Yeah.
right? But sometimes the boss needs a confidential advisor and someone to just tell him how it really is. So sometimes I fill that role for business owners or entrepreneur or executives as well, because I've worked a lot in the corporate area, and like you said, with audit, risk management, ethics, compliance, information security, really fun, sexy stuff, right?
Oh, well, to me
Um,
it is.
yes, so that's another way that I describe myself: media producer, right? Because, like I said, I've produced, I don't know, 600 podcasts and probably at
Wow.
least that many videos, and between 500 and 1,000 trainings over my life. So all that kind of stuff as well too, right? And then because I like to be a little quirky and a little weird, sometimes I'll play with people too. So here's one of Jason's bad jokes. When people would sometimes ask me, "So what do you do, Jason?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in the adult entertainment business."
Okay, because your brain goes to something.
I know, right? And so everybody like jumps to porn, right? Like Jason's got a
Yeah.
porn company. Well, no, I entertain and educate adults, just not that way, right? But it gets people, it's kind of like, what, right?
Yeah, you
And
get
and
their
then I
attention.
usually very quickly, no, I'm not into porn, right? But I remember I was at some dinner or cocktail party, and there was this one woman, that was sitting at the table, and I told everybody it was a joke, but like 5 minutes later, she's like, "So what is it like to run a porn company?" And I'm like, "I
Oh
was kidding," but it took her a little while to like realize that no, that's not really what I do.
no. Okay, do you know what
So,
oh, go ahead.
oh, no, 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 go, yeah.
I was gonna like, when you first said that you're kind of like the confidential advisor and you're playing that right hand man, my brain immediately went to, well, who's the boss? And so I was like, oh, the boss is like each individual, like each listener that you're talking to on your podcast is like they're the boss of their own life, but they're so resistant.
Mhm.
And then you come in and you somehow like get through that resistant wall like a ninja through osmosis. You just like, and all of a sudden you are that right hand man. So like you were talking about like literally businesses and companies, and I was like, oh dang, your reach is huge. Like,
Well, yeah, because it's the individuals as well, right?
yeah.
And that's one of the things that really, actually, I was on a call with some other people this morning. It was another coaching group that I belong to, and somebody actually brought that up about me, that
Oh,
I didn't realize was that I guess I have a way, and you kind of mirrored it back to me, but I guess I have a way of kind of shaking people's beliefs, myth busting, getting people to kind of, break some of their limiting beliefs, but in a way that they don't resist it, and they
mhm.
they don't even question it, because most people will kind of grab somebody and they'll shake them and they'll slap them in the face, figuratively speaking, to kind of get them to wake up. But I try to do it in such a way that they just kind of realize and come to that on their own, And like you said, because every person is their own boss, and I can't tell you what to do, Ashley. That would be wrong of me, right? To tell you what to
Yeah.
do. It's not my
It
choice. It is
violates
it is
free
your
will.
choice. It violates your free will.
Yeah.
But, obviously I can provide some guidance or some advice or ask some questions, right, to get you thinking, just to make sure that you're making the right choice for yourself. And to me, that's really important because, especially now, we see a lot of people who, I'm going to use the word hero worship,
Mhm.
okay? And where they will just give over their power effectively to somebody else and say, "Oh my gosh, Ashley, I love you. You're the greatest thing. Just tell me what I need to do." Right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that are coaches, that are quote unquote influencers online,
Yeah.
that are telling people what to do, and people are handing over their power and just making choices or trying to be like that other person, which is horrible in my opinion, right? Because you're effectively taking away someone else's free will. They're the
Yeah.
boss, they need to make the decision. Yes, can I provide some insight to maybe, if you've got a blind spot that you're not seeing? Of course. But I'm going to share it, and then it's your choice, baby. You do with it what you want to do. Do it, don't do it. I don't care, right? It's
Yeah.
it's it's up to you. It's your life.
I see, like, as far as me, like, as an objective person here, when I think about you, it just seems like you're indifferent whether or not they take it or not, but you still have this very confident, calm, like, energy. And there's just this, like, I'm going to let you know, but what you do with it is yours. And like, there's no attachment to it. And then, like, that really makes it really easy. It's not somebody's like coming up to you and saying, you have to change, you have to be somebody else, you have to do this. Like, it just is like, oh, this was shared with me. Now I can do with it what I want. And there's no reason to resist that because you've let the person be
Hmm.
how they want to be and how they want to respond to it. So it's
Well, and
quite
because
pleasant.
I know for me personally, right? I mean, I'm a pretty easygoing, calm, peaceful guy, but people can still trigger me,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh,
And one thing that triggers me and gets me to dig in my heels is when somebody tries to force me to do something.
yeah.
If someone tries to force me to do something, I will resist, even if I know it's exactly what I need to do. I will resist, I will dig my heels in.
Yeah.
And literally, I mean, when people really push hard on me, I can literally feel myself get small and go back into the corner like, fuck you. I am not doing this. I am not here. You cannot see me. You cannot touch me, right? Sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't like that when people do that to me, right? Because that's controlling,
Yeah, it is.
and that's taking away somebody else's free will. That's effectively treating another adult like you would treat a 3 or 4 year old child. And not even that we should be doing
Yeah.
that to 3 or 4 year old children either, right? But there tends to be this need by a lot of people to control or have the illusion of control when
There you
we
go.
don't have control over
No.
anything, right? We control the choices that we make, right? But we're the ones who have to make those choices.
Yeah. And then when you were speaking earlier, I would tell you that I was one of those people who gave away my authority. That was something I had to really work on. So I can definitely relate to that because for the longest time, even in my marriage with my husband, I got in for a while, I was really into like the Christian faith. And like, so I really took it to heart, literally,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
my husband is the head of the household. He gets the final say. And I was like, okay, I don't agree with you, but you're the head of the household. But I did it not even on my, like, not just in my marriage, but I did it like on everything. Like, like, let's say I had a life coach and my life coach told me to do this, and I'd be like, I don't really agree with that, but like, I trust you. And like, I literally, like, what I was literally saying was, I trust your opinion over mine, but I didn't see that for the longest time. It took a lot of work.
Well, and and what's interesting, I mean, there are a lot of people that are very persuasive,
Yeah.
and either they're persuasive from a psychological and manipulative standpoint, right? So they know how to twist words, they know how to make you feel certain ways so that they can kind of get you to do what they want you to do. There's other people who they're not necessarily being manipulative, but they're such a powerful, charismatic kind of person that we just kind of want to go along and do what they're saying, right? Because we kind of get caught up in their power.
Hmm.
And so, what's important? I mean, the same thing. It's like I don't necessarily want followers. I don't want people to be like, "Oh, Jason, you're the greatest." No. I mean, if you like what I'm saying, listen to me, show me some love, I'll show you some love, kind of thing. But, I just have to be me and say things that and do things the way I need to do it, right? But
Hmm.
I never want somebody to just believe me, just do what I'm suggesting without then kind of going back into themselves and into their own personal power and saying, what Jason said made a lot of sense, but is that the right thing for me? Right. So even when I'm coaching people, coaching executives or, in people's careers or whatever else I'm doing, it's like I don't ever want to tell them what to do. I want to give them advice, but then have them, stop and consider it and think, well, is this what I need to do? Because
Yeah.
ultimately we all have to make our own choices.
Yeah, like, yeah, what you're saying is I encourage you to ask questions, to challenge what I'm saying, and to choose what's best for you, which is what
Yeah.
a true, like, coach, well, like, that's what should distinguish the difference between, like, a coach and an advisor. So, because I know you play roles where you probably have to straddle both of those worlds.
A little bit. I mean, now that I'm, within my businesses as an owner and the boss, if you will, I kind of do, but I still kind of treat the people that I work with the same way, for the most part, I think. But
Yeah.
being out of corporate America now for so long, I don't have to kind of fit into that mold. I don't even have to say what's expected of me. And I know that's one thing that for a long time I kind of struggled with. In the last few years, I've kind of stepped more into who I am, right? Growing this crazy looking beard and not wearing a tie anymore and just showing up in t-shirts if I feel like t-shirts or whatever,
Yeah.
and just saying what I feel like I need to say, because for a lot of my life, and I think most people are this way, is we're told how to dress.
Hmm.
We're told what to say, what not to say, right?
Hmm.
Oh, well, if you're a lawyer, then a lawyer has to act this way. Oh, if you're a mom or a dad, then you have to act this way. Oh, if you're a born again Christian or you're a Buddhist or a whatever, you have to act this way, right?
Yeah.
But you don't, right? It's like there's 8 billion people in this world, which means there's 8 billion different ways of doing things. 8 billion people who have different life experiences, right? And so to try to make everyone do things the same way, or make everyone believe the same things, or tell everyone that you have to do X, Y, Z, or else you're not successful, is bullshit.
Yeah.
I'll just say it, right? I mean, it's people who like to control and manipulate who tell people to do that. And a lot of it, there's an underlying economic or power play to it, right? Like, it's like a beer commercial, drink my beer. And all of a sudden, attractive, scantily clad people will be on the beach with you, right?
Well, and that's the tricky thing about marketing, because marketing is, I mean, the principle behind it is I will tell you what to think.
Mhm.
So, I mean, because like you maybe you've probably had podcasts on this already, like on your own show, but like, like when, like for instance, on my own business, right? My job is to, for like my book, my job is to write this book and tell people what it's about. And then I sit there and I have these moments where I'm like, yeah, but everybody, like I'm also like a coach. So I'm like, everybody defines something different. So let's take something really simple, like enemies to lovers, right? Well, like my definition of enemies is going to be different than your definition. And how are we having
Mhm.
commonality between this language? Maybe they just don't like each other. Does that make them enemies? Where's the boundaries, right? And so like I'm very like, well, I want to classify things to properly market it. But then when you go on and you talk to a marketing person, they're like, stop with all this head stuff. You tell them what to think and they'll think it.
Well, and that's why again it's the as I've evolved more, there's certain parts of business that are just icky. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just be honest with it, and unfortunately, a lot of times where it really comes back to it, in my opinion, is more like the Stoic Greeks of your intention,
Mm,
right? So if your intention is to tell people what to think, and the only reason you're doing that is to make money, and you're putting people in fear that, oh
yeah.
my gosh, if I don't have this product, then I'm going to have a really sucky life, right? If that's your intention, to put people into fear and anxiety so that they will feel the need to buy your product, to me, that's wrong.
Yeah. Because it's
Probably
creating
not.
harm.
Yeah, it's creating harm. And probably 99% of the marketing is that way, because that's unfortunately how people choose to market. That's how I've been taught to market. I mean, I've done it myself because I was told that's what you have to do.
Mhm.
And I've really gotten kind of sick of that, right? Because I don't want people to be in fear and anxiety.
Yeah. That's not the energy I'm going for either.
That's not the energy I want to go for. I don't want to put people there, right? It's like I'd rather not make money than put people there to make money off of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but at the same point, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got businesses to run. I've got employees to pay, but I'm trying to look at things more, and I don't know what the right thing is. I used this term on in one group call I was in. I said, we need to figure out how to do love marketing.
Oh, I like it.
And everybody's like, damn, that actually sounds pretty good. I don't know what it looks like exactly. But instead of putting people in fear and anxiety, what if we give people hope? And it's actually a product, or it's actually a service that we know will benefit them. And again, don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of businesses that are out there, they're helping people.
Hmm.
And if that's your intention, is to help people, and that's your primary focus, is to help people and make the world a better place, then of course you should make money. People should buy your products. People should support businesses who are trying to make a difference in the world, right?
Yeah.
We should do that. And so same thing, right, with your book. And I don't, you're not this kind of person anyway,
Mhm.
right? But I would say, yeah, if you're out there going, if you don't read my book, you're going to hell. No,
Woo.
but you're not going to say anything like that, right? But that's the equivalent of what a lot of people are doing
Well,
out there with whatever it is that they're peddling, is your life is going to suck. You're going to go to hell. You're never going to make any money. You're never going to amount to anything unless you hire me as a coach, or
yeah,
you
you won't
buy
be able to
my
figure this
widget.
out.
You
Yeah.
can't figure this out on your own, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh, those
I would
gatekeepers.
I would much rather teach people how to fish and let them fish,
Yeah.
right? Because when people learn how to do things and do it for themselves, that's freedom.
It is. It's so
That's
wonderful.
freedom. And so if you're the kind of person who is always trying to be a gatekeeper or always making people come back to you for
Mm,
the answer, how are you any different than a dictator
yeah,
or
I
anybody
know.
else who is, providing influence or control over somebody else, and you're the only way? I'm the
Yeah.
hero, I'm the savior. Without me,
That's where my brain went, the savior.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
And
so
so I'm not that kind of person, right?
no,
So
you're
I'm
not.
I'm I'm probably I'm never going to make millions of dollars, and that's okay because I got to live with myself at the end of the day. Or maybe I will. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm not attached to it one way or the other,
Hmm.
right? But my goal is to help people and help people so they can help themselves and so they can truly be free.
Yeah.
Free financially, free emotionally, free spiritually, free whatever you want to put behind it. But, empower people, help them be who they really are and be uniquely who they are and be authentic to who they are and live an aligned life, right? Which is one of the things, again, I love about you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we've talked about this before, is that you've kind of over your life, you've kind of, you keep kind of clicking that in, and now you're doing something that feels much more aligned for
Hmm.
you, and what you're doing is helping the world. I
Yeah.
love seeing that. I love seeing that.
And I'm very grateful to be here. And even I was even thinking, so when you're talking about love marketing, one of the questions that I had for you is like a sketch in my mind was like, like, why are you doing all this podcast? What do you want people to experience? Like, what is driving you? And really, what is driving you in my mind? You've already answered this question. What is driving you is that you want to give people like the freedom of choice, the freedom to choose what's right for them, the freedom to just have the alignment in their soul between the choices that they're making, the integrity within themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, there are there are beings in this world. I'll give you a little.
Yeah, let's go woo, baby.
I'll give you a little analogy on
Okay.
this, right? And we can talk about aliens or not talk about aliens, but anyway,
They're here.
they're here. They're all around us. But let me give you a little analogy that I think hopefully kind of helps explain too why I feel strongly about this, and the underlying, damn
Oh,
it,
I'm intrigued.
you're giving away some of my secrets,
You've
right?
got me hooked and sunk. I
Here you
gotta
go.
hear
Here
the
you go.
story.
Come on, I'm reeling you in, reeling
I
you in. No,
know.
if you remember the movie Monsters Inc., you remember that
Yes,
movie?
it's such a
Beautiful,
good
beautiful
movie.
movie, right?
Hmm.
Beautiful movie. Monsters who their job at Monsters Inc. was to, each night they would go into kids' closets and
Hmm.
they would jump out and scare the kids, right? And when the
Yes.
kids screamed, ah, they were afraid. The little monsters had this canister that would collect the energy
Hmm.
from those kids, the screams from those kids.
Yes.
Then they'd jump back through the doors or the portals. They'd go back to Monsters Inc. and they'd upload the energy. And that was the energy that Monsters Inc. and the city that they lived in
It sustained them.
sustained them, was the fear of these children. They would go scare the children. They would collect the fear energy from those children.
And
They
meanwhile, they
would,
were afraid of them too, because they were taught to be afraid of them.
and they were afraid of them as well, right?
Hmm.
And so when you had that instance where I think, what is it, Sully and Mike, I think were the two
Yeah,
monsters'
yeah,
names, right?
yeah.
They found Boo, and some mishap happened, and so she wasn't actually afraid of him, and she ended up tagging along with them, and they became friends. And what they realized was when Boo would laugh, when she was happy, the energy that she gave off was exponential,
Yeah.
right?
It's
From the
potent.
energy of fear.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, doesn't that tell us something?
Yeah, I never correlated that on that show. Even, yeah, so brilliant. I love this metaphor.
So what I will tell you is there are beings just like Monsters Inc. who are feeding off of the fear and anxiety and low emotions that
Mm-hmm.
people get put into.
Mm-hmm.
There are structures in this world designed to enslave humans into those low frequency vibration emotions. So, my job, or what I'm trying to do, is help get people out of that into their higher frequency vibrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Elevate literally the vibration of your body, of your soul, to where you're emotionally, instead of being in fear, anxiety, shame, depression, anger, all those kinds of things. I want people to be in gratitude and joy and happiness and well-being and love, right?
Yeah.
Because that is our Monsters Inc. analogy,
Mm-hmm.
but it ain't an analogy.
Right.
It's
We're living it.
life. It's life, right? And
Mhm.
so, for us to change the world, we've got to be more positive. We've got to get ourselves into those other emotions. So when I tell a joke, when I'm being silly, when I'm singing, when I'm doing different things, right? I'm trying to help people at least for a small part of their day get in those other emotions. Because the more you can be in those other emotions, even if it's just for a little bit during the day, you make a huge, huge impact to the collective energy of this world. So
And
that's one of the reasons why I use music and some of the stories and other things like that as well, because the more we all can be in that, literally, we are affecting the collective energy in this world and in the universe.
yeah. And I would say that sometimes I feel like I live in a bubble. Or maybe I've put myself in that bubble, but in my world, I feel a lot of love and a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. And then, you get out and you like, let's talk about like your fans or your followers, or you look at social media, you start interacting with people in line at the grocery store, and there's so much hurt. People are carrying so much hurt. It hurts me just hearing their story and feeling their pain. Oh, I wish people were able to let go of all of those things, because like just like you were using in your metaphor about Monster Inc., both options are available
Yep.
at all times. Both options were available, but sometimes you're blindsided to only one.
Well, it is. And I think, sometimes, I mean, and this is the other thing too, because I guess one of the emotions that I forgot in that list is hope.
Yeah,
Hope. And if you can have hope, right? If we can help give people hope, right? That's one of the greatest gifts that you can give anyone. But I know a lot of times, people, I get to live in a bubble too because I choose to create my bubble,
yeah,
and I choose to view or see the world in a certain way.
yeah,
And so this is a lot of the same things are happening in my world that are happening in other people's worlds, but I see challenges as opportunity,
there you go.
right? I see pain as a growth opportunity, right? And try to transition from those things as soon as I can. I mean,
Same here.
sometimes I don't do as good a job, but I'm there too. I mean, my podcast that dropped today was called Everybody Hurts Sometimes, right? The
Yeah,
REM song.
I do have that song. Yeah,
Yeah, and so it's, because we all do, but there are things that we all can do, right? And again, Ashley, you don't need to go save the world.
yeah. I know. I have to
Some
remind myself that.
some people feel like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything unless I save the world and I've got this huge dharmic goal." Are you fucking kidding me? What if you just smile
I know.
to a stranger? What if you give a joke or actually look at the person who's checking you out in the grocery store and you notice their name tag and you say, Joan, thank you. Have a nice day.
Hmm.
Joan probably had 100 or 200 people go through that checkout, and almost nobody talked to Joan. Nobody saw Joan as a person. Even if you just see Joan as a person and you say something funny, or you compliment her on her outfit or her hair or her nails or whatever, something that you know is important to that person, right? At least for that small second, Joan is seen. Joan feels valued. And we can all do that, right?
Yeah.
I learned this. One of the guys that I knew when I lived over in Germany for a while, he was a Russian immigrant who had come over. And I remember one of the stories that he told me about his mother, because his mother was kind of like a kind of person,
Right.
right?
And
Well,
yeah.
his dad was like a colonel in the military, and so he kind of
Yeah.
came from that sort of family,
Rules, structures. Yeah.
rural structure, all that stuff. But I remember him telling me, he said, I used to walk past, there was this really grumpy guy in the neighborhood, like the neighborhood grouch
Yeah.
that would always walk
Oscar the
by, and
Grouch.
he'd kind of yell at the kids or do other different stuff. And his mom like got on him. She's like, it does not matter what that man does to you, what he says to you. Every day when you go by, you smile at him. You give him a smile every day,
Mm,
right? And
okay.
eventually things like that end up coming back. The guy kind of stopped doing that, right? So what little things can we do, right, to make somebody else's day brighter? Because when we do that, we also make our own day brighter,
Yeah.
right? So if you're hurting, if you're struggling, one of the quickest ways to get out of it, two quick ways. One is turn whatever that pain is or the pity that you're feeling into gratitude.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Find some way to express gratitude, even if it's in your heart, yell it out, whatever, of being grateful for whatever it is that you're going through right now. Because you might not understand it now, but you will later. You'll
Yeah.
understand later. But if you can feel grateful now, okay, that's one way. The other way is just go serve somebody. Just do something. Even if it's, hey, I haven't called my brother in a while. I'm just going to call and talk to him for 5 minutes. Don't really like him, but I'm going to call him and I'm going to tell him I love him.
I love
We can
it.
do that. We can say hi to, when you're walking in the neighborhood, just saying hi and waving or smiling to people. That's a little something, right? They don't even have to be big things, but something to give hope, to give love, to share something with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Tell a stupid joke, just laugh, whatever, right? Something to help ease others' suffering and help raise the vibration of this world.
Yeah. And I know that one of the mottos I have is kind of like if you put love out, love is what's going to be returned. So that's actually one of the reasons I started this podcast like a year ago, over a year ago. Is like, I'm like, okay, well, the best way for me to learn my lessons, to really grow in my lessons, is to share them. And the more I share them, to help other people, like the more growth I get from it. And so it's a win-win to me because I'm going to help people and maybe prevent them from having similar issues or knowing that they're not alone in this or whatever it may be.
Yep.
Then
Yeah, because every little thing that we do helps,
yeah,
right? And I think too, hearing people's stories,
yeah,
right? I mean, you sharing your story, you showing up, it helps people, right? I mean, and you won't know the full impact that you're having. That's okay,
yeah.
but you are having
Well,
an
I'm
impact.
glad for it.
I promise you, you are having an impact because I know you.
Well, good.
You are impacting the world in a positive way.
I know. I love it too. Because I love smiling and I love being happy.
Well, and see, even just that, right? You smiling right there, you giggling a little bit, makes me want to smile and makes me want to giggle
Yeah,
a
like
little bit too.
infectious,
It's
like
infectious.
contagious. Yeah. Yeah. And it contagious in a positive way. Not a
Well,
sick.
it's a good contagious, right?
Yeah, I know. I know
Yeah,
that word is such associated like as a bad way, but yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when did you first start your podcast? Like, which one did you start first?
Well, it was actually I've got two that are running now. Actually, I think Fire and Earth was the first one that I started back in 2019, and it was only a few months later that I started jamming with Jason. So it's been about 4 years now
Okay.
that I've been doing those two. I'm in the process now of probably starting a third one with another
Ooh.
co-host.
Ooh.
So we'll be talking probably a little bit more about um,
So, yeah, wait,
yeah,
distinguish all three. Let's set
distinguish all
that
three.
up. Yeah.
The Fire and Earth podcast. It's I do with my friend Dr. Kathy Groover. So she's got a kind of a healing background, as far as massage therapy, hypnosis, that kind of stuff. She's kind of worked a lot in that area. I have more of the corporate kind of background, and on that we really just kind of talk about anything that we feel like talking about. It's a co-hosted show, so it's usually the two of us, or sometimes we'll have a guest on.
I've
Um,
listened to you guys have really great back and forth discussions.
do we?
You play off of each other really well. It's almost like you two are like sister and brother, like
Well, we kind of are. We joke about that
okay.
we're kind of like siblings from another mother, kind of
There you
kind of
go.
kind of a deal. So yeah, we have that one, and there, I mean, there's no topic that's off limit. We've had all kinds of stuff. Astrologers. We actually had a dominatrix on one time, so that was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a bunch of hypnotists, magicians, because Kathy is really kind of plugged into the hypnotists, and she's also on the board of the Magic Castle, so she knows a lot of magicians and other
Okay.
people like that. So we get a lot of performance kind of people on, but we've had coaches and other people. It's really just trying to talk about anything that we feel like is going to help people unlock their potential and be better. And so that one, like I said, that's been going for about 4 years. We're up to 250, 60 episodes on that one, something like that. And jamming with Jason, I've been doing almost as long. That one started off more kind of technical to begin with. So some of the older ones, I'm talking more about audit and risk management. So, if that's your thing, go back to the early episodes, and there might be some stuff in there for you. But really, it's been transforming the last couple of years to be more leadership and personal development focused, and kind of in the way the magical mystery man you talked
Yeah.
about. So
Yes.
I'll talk about things like ice cream, but I'm not talking about ice cream
I love that.
usually. And I do share a lot of stuff about music because I love music. So I've been incorporating more music in there. It's a little tricky because the hard part is if I play stuff, then like YouTube and everybody's like, copyright
Yeah.
issue and all that kind of
Yeah.
bullshit. But so trying to incorporate more of that in, more of the storytelling, and a lot of the guests that I have on are people who I think are doing some amazing things, like you, in the world.
I was a
Um,
guest.
yeah, and people that I think are good examples of what can be and what people can work through, right? To be able to help give people that message of hope, to realize you're not the only one going through whatever it is that you're going through.
Mhm.
um and recently, I'm gonna go more there, is more kind of from the spiritual soulful side as well.
Mhm.
Because I think that again, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions about what that is, and a lot of people who are talking about those things and they just really have no clue what they're talking about, and they're kind of missing the mark with a lot of it.
Yeah.
So there'll be a little bit more about that. This other one that I'm starting is going to be with Brad Miller. We're going to do at least a few to begin with. He's a lawyer. I'm a recovering accountant, and so two guys kind of talking about more spiritually minded, being yourself, and not necessarily needing to fit the stereotype of a professional, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who are in a professional or scientific or analytical logical job who also are intuitive
Hmm.
and spiritual people, but they're kind of in the closet,
Hmm.
or they're curious but they don't know where to go or who to talk to or any of that kind of stuff. So we're going to start touching on some of those kinds of topics a little bit more there, and I'll be talking more of them on jamming with Jason as well. So
Well, I'm excited to hear all of that because I think there is a need. I guess a need is the appropriate word. And even in my own life, again, that's one of the reasons I joined for the transformational program we were in. You had the option of joining this thing called Inner Circle after you had done TCP. And I joined it because I was hoping to learn a lot more about spiritual practices. So, and even though it was a really great community, for me personally, everything I've basically learned spiritually has come from sitting in quiet time, like sitting and meditating and opening myself up and having these ideas come to me and wondering about them and sitting with them and puzzling them out, essentially.
yeah, because there are certain spiritual practices that you can do, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and a lot of different mediums that you can use, if you will, right? So
Yeah, you use
uh,
music.
yeah, I use music or incorporate music into a lot of the things. So like what you were saying, sitting. Some people call it meditation, call it whatever you want to, right?
Yeah.
But there's a part of quieting your mind, or what you're really kind of doing is slowing the brainwave activity. There's several different methods that you can use to do that. There's breathing exercises, there's visualization, there's chanting, there's other things like that you can use. You can use music, you can use tones, you can use frequencies as well. What I found is it's much quicker
Yeah.
for people to be able to actually use some of the music. So in fact, like I never taught it before, but I just taught a music class. I did like a 4 or 5 week little music class,
Hmm.
to just share some of the stuff, because a lot of people ask me questions. And so, and you'll know this, and maybe people that are listening who do meditative practices, a lot of times to get in what would be considered an altered conscious state
Yeah.
usually takes minutes,
Yeah.
sometimes hours, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'll hear people talking about, sitting in meditation for 2 hours, 4 hours, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
With music, literally within a few minutes, people can feel like their body melting and kind of going into this altered state of consciousness when you know how to use the music the right way.
Hmm.
Which to me, I've been kind of practicing it or using it, but I didn't realize how effective it could be until I actually kind of took some people through it, and they're like, "Holy shit!" I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah. And so
yeah."
now this will be like a routine class, a quarterly class, or like what are your thoughts?
I don't know.
Okay.
I
Sky's the
did it.
limit.
I did it. I've got it all recorded, so I'll make it available to people too, afterwards. But I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right? It was one of those things where
You
I felt from an
spontaneous.
intuition standpoint that I needed
Yeah.
to do it, so I did it, and I've got something out there. Um, so we'll see where it goes. But like I
Yeah.
said, I just there's and I guess to that point, there's so many different ways that people can do it, right? For some people, hypnosis works great. They
Mhm.
love it. They don't want to do anything else. Great. For some people, music might work. For some people, walking in nature. aromatherapy, you know, essential oils. Some people it's crystals. I mean, there are so many different modalities and mediums that you can use uh, to do certain things. So I'll just give you one example. Is most people uh, that are more spiritually minded, they like to clean or cleanse themselves or
Yeah,
cleanse
yeah,
the
yeah.
energy, right?
Yeah.
So most people know about smudging, right?
Mhm.
Using sage is what a lot of people use, but there's other things you can use as well. But you can use smudging to clear energy, but you can also use a lot of other things that nobody
Yeah.
talks about. You
Yeah.
can use
I use my
frequencies
incense.
and tones
Yeah.
and incense. You can use crystals.
Mhm.
You can use music and sound vibration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to do these things. And so I think, you know, for me, it's more about trying to raise some of the awareness of other ways of doing things
Yeah.
so that people can find out what works best for them.
Yeah. Because not everybody is the same. And
No.
I mean, I think that even circles back to our front half of the conversation where we were kind of talking about each person is like unique and you don't want to take away their free will. But when you tell people there's only one way to do it, it's not that you're taking away their free will. It's just you're limiting the possibilities that exist for that person. So sometimes like when you tell people the hows, you
Yeah, or as you are sharing, sometimes you make people who receive or process differently feel like they're not good or they don't know how to do it.
yeah. Yeah,
So
that
again,
there's something
uh,
wrong with what they're doing. And
yeah, right. And it's, but as an example, I'll just share this, right? Is a lot of people, when they close their eyes and they're, you know, connected or talk about things like third eye opening and all that kind of stuff, you know, I see dead people, I talk to dead people, whatever, right? Well, for people that don't do that, or maybe that's not their gift, or they're not to that point, they feel like, well, I must be doing something wrong because I'm not talking to dead people,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're not doing anything wrong. When I close my eyes, I see black, right? A lot of people don't realize that, but I'm processing and I'm receiving, and I don't hear voices, but I have knowings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a different way of processing or receiving than maybe somebody who hears voices,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so just because I receive it or I prefer, you know, or am good at doing something different doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me, right? But I see that a lot of times, and it kind of goes back to that coaching discussion we had before, that a lot of times people are out there kind of telling people what they should be doing or what they should be experiencing. And it's like, again, there's 8 billion people on this earth, right?
Yeah.
We're all a little bit different.
I used
That's,
to think that I didn't have a connection with crystals because, like, when I would hear people talk about crystals, they were receiving so much energy. And I'm like, this is not vibrating for me. This isn't warming up. This isn't doing anything. And Moldavite was different. But outside of that one, I'm like, I don't feel anything, blah, blah, blah. But what I really realized was because, somebody said, well, just keep working with them. You never know when you're going to feel something. And so I was like, okay. So, I mean, I continue to work with them and nothing that I experienced changed, but my understanding changed because I noticed if I was going to maybe do a presentation, I was really nervous about it, or, I was going to be on a podcast interview or something like that, I would grab whatever crystal drew my eye. And I noticed that my energy was calmer, like whatever. It's like my energy was being transposed to this. And I was like, okay, so I can't receive, but I can give. I do have a connection, but I wouldn't have known that because nobody explained the variations of what you can go through. I only knew one way. And I was like, well, that's not working for me. So I don't have a connection. And that was my assumption. And that's really because I'm also a hypnotist. Like when you think something, that thinking can block you.
mhm.
It's like the saying, oh gosh, my spirit guides are always telling me saying, not knowing is knowing. Like stop knowing so that you can know. Like
Well, and don't let your clarity blind you,
Yeah, that's a
right?
good
I mean,
way of putting it. Yeah,
that's a lot of times we think we have the answers, but in
yeah,
thinking that we blind ourselves. And it's interesting that you bring that up, right? So for those of you watching the video, if you guys can watch the video, Jason's got a big old thing here of different crystals, right?
yeah, they're nice. They
Why?
have a large size one.
They're nice. They're nice kind of palm stone ones.
Hmm.
So I treat them, and like you said, there's giving and there's receiving of everything.
Yeah, well, yeah.
There's reciprocity in life, right? So crystals give you something, you give the crystal something as well, right? There's the balance. There has to be the balance. And so I actually treat those. I'm not like a guru when it comes to crystals. I do have a lot of different crystals around and I use them for certain things. In fact, I have that same tree that you have right there.
Awesome. I love it.
Anyway, but what I do is I allow myself to be intuitive, and so a lot of times when I'm on a call with people or I'm listening to something, I will just reach over and I will know which one to grab, and I just hold on to it in
Mhm.
my hand for a little while, and I kind of think of it like crystal pharmaceuticals, not like crystal meth pharmaceuticals.
There's your jokes, everyone.
There's
There's
my
your
joke.
jokes.
Ah! But you know that for some reason I need that at that point, just like you described, right? Sometimes you might be feeling a little nervous, you feel drawn to one particular thing. Some of that nervousness is probably being transmuted to the
Yeah.
crystal, and
Yeah.
it's you're giving it something and it's giving you something to help give you what you need at that point. Like
Yes.
I said, there's so many different um, ways and things that you can do. That's just one example, right? But there's so many different ways, and different things work for different people, and different things work better maybe at certain times than others, or you might change. And for a while, you might be drawn to something, and then you're drawn to something else later, and that's okay because we all have our own path that we're kind of going down. So
And those paths are very curvy. So let me ask you, so what was like a really hard obstacle for you to kind of overcome, transmute in your own ways? Like,
which one you want to talk about?
which one are you open to sharing? So
international
you're
man
open
of
book. So
international man of mystery that can't let everything out of the bag, right?
I know.
No, I think I mean, I've gone through. I don't share a lot of the things. I mean, it depends on when I feel whatever I happen to. But suffice it to say, most of the things that people have gone through that they think are shitty things in life, I've gone through a lot of them. I
Yeah.
don't tell people about it, but and I've gotten better at just kind of getting through them quicker.
Hmm.
But probably, a big one that that I haven't shared that much publicly with a lot of people, but was um, my breaking away from religion.
Okay.
So when I grew up, I was raised Mormon.
Oh, I didn't know
Uh,
that. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and anyway, long story behind that. But when you leave a church like the Mormon Church,
Yeah,
it's
that's a
kind of
really
like
tight
leaving
community.
Scientology
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a lot of other things where you're not just giving up a religion, you're giving up your whole life.
Yeah.
Most of the
Scarlet letter
people
is coming in my head.
like what?
Scarlet letter is coming to my head because
Pretty
she
much.
she had to leave her village and be outside, and not only that, but she had to wear a letter to remind her, but you don't have the letter, but you're essentially no
Pretty
longer
marked.
invited
Yeah.
to know these people anymore.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of and it's not just limited to religion, but sometimes when people have to make a change, they have to give up everything to make that change.
Yeah.
So in that instance, I gave up my marriage, I gave up my kids, I gave up my friends, I gave up, a lot of things that were kind of tied to that because in that religion in particular, there's a lot of your social life that's all tied up in the church as well, right?
Yes, they do everything together.
Yeah, and so you have to kind of walk away from everything, which is hard to do. It took me several years to actually have the courage to do it because I know it was going to kind of blow up my life, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I've gone through that. But then the interesting thing too was that when you do that, I kind of threw out everything, right? And I was throwing out the baby with the bathwater, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
And there's a great
Yeah.
story behind that. If you want to know why we have some of those colloquialisms, I'll tell you that too.
Oh, okay, that'd be
Pretty
interesting
interesting.
because I hear it all the time.
Yeah, yeah, you hear it
Yeah.
all the time. So I'll tell you that story too. But what's interesting is that then I went from throwing everything out to being, oh, I'm an atheist now, because if there were certain parts that I knew were not right, but there were other parts that I knew were true. So it's like, nope, now I'm going to be an atheist. Well, that didn't last for very long because I'm not an atheist. So then
Right.
I'll be an agnostic, right? And now I'm a very spiritual kind of person because I've been able to reconcile the truths that I learned as a child and was taught in religion, because there are truths all around us in
Yeah.
every religion, in the symbols that we see, there are truths all around us, right? And now as I've, again, I keep kind of evolving, I see it's like I'm putting together this puzzle, and it's like, 20 years ago I knew that this puzzle piece sitting over here is a part of the puzzle, and I knew it was true, and I had a connection to it, but I had no idea where it fit. And now 20 years later, it's like, oh, there's that other piece, and they fit together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's been a lot of uh my going as well,
And
in my evolution.
I think that speaks a lot to love, to me personally. That's my perspective. When you're saying this, like when you're saying two different pieces, that you were at a point in your life where you weren't ready to recognize a piece over here, but you saw this piece and then they came together. To me, that speaks of a little more love and understanding that you have acknowledged and, created within you. Now you get to share that externally because it exists within you.
Well, it does, and I think too that it's I've I've literally traveled millions of miles. I have been to 48 of the 50 states. I've been to 35 to 40 countries in the world.
Wow.
I know people from all over. I've
No
walked
wonder you're
the
international.
alleyways. I'm literally an international man of mystery. I taught CIA training and was part of the NSA for a while, so
I can't tell if that's a joke or serious, but I love it.
it's serious and a joke. So maybe later I'll have to tell you that one. Um, but yeah, so I was showing up all over and people didn't know what I was doing, and they still don't know what I was doing. But anyway, um, but yeah, so I think I have been able to reconcile a lot too, that I have a lot more compassion and love for other people, because where most people might look at somebody who has a different belief structure or different background than they do and think, well, that person's kind of stupid, right? They don't really understand how the world is.
Mhm,
But I can look at anyone and I can understand why they're the way that they are,
mhm.
right? Because I understand what they've been taught, what they were indoctrinated with,
Yeah,
where they grew up in the world, and why they probably believe some of the things that they believe, some of which are false. I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff that we're taught in this world are lies.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
there was an agenda even back then, so
There has always been an agenda. Yeah,
yeah.
there's always been an agenda. But a lot of what people believe is also true. And so you can have compassion for other people as well, because I was that person. I'm still that person
I
in
was
some
that
ways,
person too, so I can understand.
right? And it doesn't make anybody, right or wrong, good or bad, but it's just who they are and understanding the station in life or where they're at that point.
Mhm.
And if that's where they want to stay, fine,
Yeah.
right? Fine. If they want to change, if they want to start questioning some of those beliefs, if they want to start throwing off some of those structures that they've been living with for so long, I understand
Oh yeah.
and can help them to start asking themselves some of those questions and reconcile a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I've spent a lot of time reconciling a lot of the things that I was taught before and other stuff. And it's like, oh, that's why I always kind of believed that, but it didn't make a lot of sense. Now I understand why it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I'm kind of in that same boat too. And I find that more things keep showing up for me like that. So
Hmm.
I know you never know when it's gonna hit you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, anyway, you want to hear
Thank
the
you.
colloquialism stuff too?
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's
We
hear
got to
it.
have some nice trivia on here as well. So, there's certain sayings that we have in the English language that actually go back to medieval England. Okay. And
Ooh,
one of those is throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right?
okay.
Because when people would, we didn't have showers back then, right? And
Mhm.
so typically what would happen is there would be an order in which you would take a bath. I mean, I remember I actually did this when I was a kid because we had a cabin with no running water or anything like that. So when we'd go up there, we actually would like get in the old bathtub and pour the,
Oh
have to
wow.
heat the water
Get
up
the
and
full
pour it over
experience.
ourselves. Full experience, right?
Yeah.
I bathe once a week, whether I need it or not. That was another saying because people usually only took a bath once a week.
Well, that
But
was a lot of
so
work to take a bath.
it's a lot of work because you had to heat the water up,
Run it back and
and you had to
forth.
heat up a lot of it. Yeah. So anyway, where that comes from, because typically the adults would wash first, and then the babies would be at the end. So the water was always dark,
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
so it was be careful that the baby's not floating down in the bottom and you don't see it. So that's where that comes from. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Oh wow.
And there's some other ones around that. If you've ever heard of being piss poor
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and not having a pot to piss in,
Yep, that one I definitely,
you've
yeah,
heard that, right? And
yeah.
dirt poor.
Mhm.
Well, where those came from is, again, in the old days, if you were poor, you didn't have a floor, you had dirt on the
Mhm.
floor,
That's in
right?
my
So
book
you were dirt poor,
too.
right?
Yeah.
If you had a pot to piss in, then you were still poor, but at least you could buy a pot and
Yeah,
everybody would
you were
urinate in
medium
it.
wealth. You were mid
Yeah.
class.
Well, so everybody would urinate, and then they could sell the urine to the
What?
tanners. No, it's serious, right? So if you had a little bit of money, so you had a pot, then you could actually earn a little bit of money by selling
Oh
your urine
wow.
to the tanners. But if you were even poorer, then you didn't have a pot to piss in, meaning you couldn't even buy a pot to do that because you didn't
Yeah.
even have enough money.
Yeah, you couldn't even make a residue income, man. Like
Yeah. So anyway, and it's funny to me how, because words are important. And as a writer, you know that
oh
too.
are. Yeah.
But there's a lot of sayings and a lot of words that we use that
We don't know why we use them.
we don't know why we use them. And understanding why we use them, to me, that just opens up the magic a little bit more now too.
And this makes the episode totally full circle because this is exactly why Jason always stood out for me. I loved all his stories. Do you see what he knows? It's like freaking amazing. And there's just like all of these things that you're like, really? Really? Like, I love it. I love it. That's why I had you on here because you're a great storyteller. I can't wait for you to. Okay, so just for the audience, I was on his show we talked about my book, The Birth Challenge, and he was kind enough to interview me, and when we were talking, I found out that he had written a book, or at least started a book 13 years ago. So now I lost why I was saying that.
Well,
But
because it was both of us had started the book 13 years ago.
yeah, yeah, both of us had started a book 13 years ago. So yeah, we somehow keep coming full circle.
Yeah, I'm halfway through a novel. I don't know if I'll pull it out and redo it again, but anyway, yeah. So we've got the writer connection too. Well, and I guess that's another thing too, that to kind of tie back into what we were talking about before. A little bit with, a lot of people are hurting.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a lot of divisiveness in this world. Just smiling, just trying to be kind to somebody in any way that you can. But the other thing that you sharing that reminded me about is our world is so divisive, and we're taught to look for the differences, and a lot of times people will focus on the differences, right?
Yeah.
So I can look at Ashley and say, well, Ashley, you're a woman, I'm a man. Yeah, we're both wearing glasses, but you've got kind of reddish hair, I have no hair, right? So I can choose to focus on those things, or I can say, hey, we have the same, crystal tree. We're both wearing glasses.
We're
We're
both
both
writers.
authors. We
Yeah.
both 13 years ago, we're in the process of writing a book. We're
We
both
both have a podcast.
podcast
That's
shows,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So one of the other little takeaways for people as well is start looking for ways that you're similar to other people,
Yeah.
right? Because if you look, you will find ways that you are similar to other people, and you will find ways to like that other person.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got to see
Because
past the.
I like you, Ashley.
Well, I like you too. I enjoy talking to you. I mean, I hope everyone that's listening right now has learned something. There's several takeaways. There is, turn your pain into being grateful, question everything, knowing that you have the free will to make these choices for yourself. There's just so many things that you know, I'm thinking about how empathy can set your heart on fire. That is literally what was coming to me. And I was like, I can't say that. That doesn't make sense, but it
Yes, you
does.
can. It totally makes sense, and I'm going to write that one down too. Empathy,
My downloads that come to me.
set your heart on fire. Well,
Yeah.
no, because and I will. Well, I'll share this then too. If you, our heart is love energy, right? And
Yeah.
again, so we can think about it pumps blood through our bodies and all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
you can also think of your heart as, and what I try to do sometimes is think of it like a bright bulb.
Okay. Yeah, like channel
And
is what I was going to.
yeah, and that almost like I'm a lighthouse. And
Yeah.
so when I am feeling love, when I am feeling empathy, it can set my heart on fire.
Mhm.
And when I feel my heart on fire, what I want to do is share that with other people. And so I can imagine this energy building up into my heart, and then I radiate that out into the world just like I'm a lighthouse or a candle.
Yeah.
And if people would spend a couple minutes every day and just kind of do that, allow that empathy, allow that love to come into your heart, to feel the gratitude for it, and then to kind of imagine that you are projecting and sending those light rays out across the world, you don't know how much you would be helping this world if you just take 30 seconds a day to imagine that and to actually feel it and share that love. You will be making a huge difference in the world. And a lot bigger difference than a lot of other things that you could be doing.
Yeah, because everything's energy.
Everything is energy. And the more that you can share that energy, Monsters Inc.
That's right. That's right. I love, see, you tied it in so good. That's because you're a podcaster. You and I think alike.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm over here playing my drums.
I know. I do enjoy your music capabilities, abilities. I don't know what the right word is for that, but yes. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you everyone for listening. I am looking forward to seeing what happens. I know, because it's just so the audience knows, he's actually one of the people who have downloaded my chapter 1 of the birth challenge and is reading it. So I am looking forward to hearing what he has to say about this, the mystery man. So the international
Man of mystery.
He's gonna find things in my book that I didn't even know of. That's what's so amazing about knowing people. And when you put something out in the world, you have no idea what that's going to do for another person. And then Jason's going to read this and come back to me and be like, did you know this ties into something in Egypt? And I'm going to be like, what? That's mind blowing. And I'm going to
yeah, that's why I'm just, for everybody who's listening, go download it. I've gone through the first half of the first chapter so far before we talk today, but it's fabulous, and I'm very excited to have that discussion with you, because there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come up and you're going to be like, what? I'm like, oh yeah,
I can't wait for this discussion. We'll be on one of our podcasts. So
Yep.
Follow us both. Like and follow Jason. You already know about 2 of the podcasts that he has out right now, Jamming with Jason and Earth and Fire. I've listened to them. They're both enjoyable. And now I'm super intrigued about his third one with the lawyer talking about spiritual stuff and really embracing it in your corporate professional world and claiming who you really are. So that's super exciting. I'm very grateful for people like Jason who are out there being that heartfelt leader, paving the path for everybody to make it easier. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. All right, everyone, you matter.